These are not civil protesters.
This is what the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office emailed to all of the mainstream press. So this is what their search warrant executed on known criminal anarchists. The search warrant was a part of an ongoing investigation regarding serious criminal acts. Ramsey County Sheriff Bob Fletcher stated, quote, "This investigation pertains to actions of the RNC Welcoming Committee. The Welcoming Committee is a criminal enterprise made up of 35 self-described anarchists who are intent on committing criminal acts before and during the Republican National Convention."
The arrest today followed the arrests of 6 other protesters. The protesters you see here are members of the group called the RNC Welcoming Committee. They're being held on charges of conspiracy to commit a riot.
Our investigation solely focuses on one group, the RNC Welcoming Committee.
They needed an enemy, and you need people in order to have an enemy, and you need several people in order to conspire. One reason could be that they, like Fletcher personally, needed to create an enemy to justify his behavior, and the behavior of the sheriffs and cops on day one. You need an enemy in order to justify being so violent, and you need an enemy to justify the raids. None of their story, this is a story they're telling people, works without an enemy.
They're charging the 8 of us because of the organizing work that we did. We were working with the Welcoming Committee, which is explicitly anarchist and anti-authoritarian. From the beginning, we decided which basically meant we were working collectively. We're gonna have every decision be non-hierarchical and consensed on. That's the organizing model that we wanted to put forward. And we also wanted to get our politics out there.
I think by labeling us as leaders of the Welcoming Committee, it shows a complete non-understanding of what anarchism means.
People actually being in charge of their own lives rather than a president or a Congress or a police officer. I think, obviously the person most suited to, actually be in control of your life is yourself.
They are going to use every tool in their tool belt to maintain control and do so by any means necessary and by any means available to them.
I just see us as having gotten caught up in what they saw as an opportunity to, suppress organizing now and forevermore.
As a community organizer and someone who's an active part of my community, if I'm targeted in such a fashion that they're throwing these absurd allegations at me and trying to put me in jail, put me in prison for years potentially, what kind of atmosphere is that for the children that I'm teaching, and what kind of world are we creating that becomes so dangerous that the government has to, treat you like they treat me.
The point is that we want a society where we don't even need the protests in the first place. But how to get to that society that's the question, right? And I think it takes a long time and a lot of sacrifice. And if we want a different world, we all have to sacrifice something to get there, and that's just the reality.
They thought that by taking out people that were visible, maybe a little more public, maybe a little louder than other people, that they could cut the head off of our organizing, and that backfired.
It was inspiring to me in a lot of ways, and made it worthwhile that while I was in jail and while 7 other people that I organized with were in jail, the organizing didn't stop.
They're attacking us for our politics and the way that we were successful in getting them out in the open. We worked with groups who had much different politics from ours, but they had to work with us because of all the energy we were putting into this. We were the main logistical organizers for the protests, and we were anarchists, and the government really hates that. I'm sure that's part of the reason we're on trial, is they don't want protests organized by people that are too radical for them to co-opt. They don't want protests organized by people who have politics that they don't understand. For one, they don't understand what we're doing, that we are just organizing it, that we just did logistics for a protest. And number two, they don't understand why we are accepted in the public light. They think, oh, these people should hate them. It should be really easy to split this movement and get those anarchists out of here. But they can't. These people, we've built relationships with a wider community, and they can't destroy those just by charging us.
Based on this extremely broad definition, and these 8 people who are identified as organizers are charged not only with conspiring to riot, but of being terrorists. Now, the interesting thing is, none of these people are accused of participating in any protests in the Republican convention. They were actually, most of them were arrested before the convention started. They were preemptive arrests.
A lot of the work that we did as the Welcoming Committee was really boring, nuts and bolts work. We were a logistical body. We weren't planning protests. We were merely creating an infrastructure for people to plug into to do these protests. It wasn't just anarchists that were eating our food or visiting our convergence center. It was people in the community. It was people from the March Coalition. It was people from all over the Twin Cities that were curious about what we had to offer. And I think that scared them. The fact that we were so public about what we were doing and we weren't afraid of the consequences.
So, yeah, you know about we're on trial for this conspiracy to commit riot and furtherance of terrorism.
Sure. Before we worry about pardoning you, let's worry about making sure you have a fair trial.
Yeah.
I believe in that. And that means pretrial stuff, too. That means filing the motions necessary to get your case dismissed. That means making sure that if you do go to trial, that the trial's fair. That only evidence that is admissible is admitted, and any stuff that's inflammatory, designed to scare the jury or make them make a decision out of fear, will be excluded. These are the kind of things that are important. Yeah. And, justice is never really, it's never really a foregone conclusion that just because you're right that you're going to get justice. You have to make sure you get it by sticking and staying and not backing down and standing on principle.
I think from the beginning we knew that there was going to be some sort of blowback on what we were doing, and it didn't scare us. I shouldn't say it didn't scare us. It didn't stop us.
There isn't anything linking them to anything to harming people. They're accused of going around to meetings, trying to encourage people to join the protests. They were accused of being part of a group called the RNC Welcoming Committee, which was started a couple of years before the convention and then spied on by undercover police officers, police informants, and FBI informants almost full-time for a year, where they attended every meeting. And based on identifying people as being active in this particular group of very intelligent, peaceful, idealistic people who are concerned about political issues, they've now all been charged with engaging in some kind of conspiracy to commit terrorism, based on trying to organize what, again, previously would have been classified as traditional civil disobedience, something that people are understood to have the space for doing. And now the really dangerous, chilling thing is that by just being an organizer of political protest, anyone is subjected to being labeled a terrorist.
Once the free speech zones get smaller and smaller, I think it's our duty to just ignore them and decide what our free speech zone is, and that should be the whole city. It should be the whole world.
They vigorously and publicly wanted people to come and crash the convention, to try to shut it down. I don't think they were delusional, however, and I don't think they believed that they were really going to battle 3,000 to 4,000 police to a standstill and somehow shut the convention down. What they were using was political rhetoric.
If civil disobedience becomes framed as terrorism, even though no one's hurt, if it's just framed as terrorism, oh my God, you wouldn't let our buses come to the convention, we're terrorized, that's baloney. And the reason they're waving that T word around, there's one reason and one reason only, because they want to squash dissent, and they want